Everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this session on how to become a Race Against Dementia Fellow. My name is Rosa Sancho. I'm Head of Research at Alzheimer's Research UK, and we are co-funding and managing the review process of these fellowships with Race Against Dementia. I'm joined today by Bridget Barker, Chief Executive Officer at RAD. Welcome, Bridget. And Dr. Maura Malpetti from Cambridge.
Hello, everyone.
And Emily Lane Hill from Warwick.
Hello.
Welcome both. They are both two of our current Race Against Dementia Fellows. So we hope that this session is helpful for you as you consider applying for the fellowships. I will start by highlighting just some key aspects of the process for applying, and then I'll hand over to Bridget for an introduction on the motivation behind these awards and what RAD are looking for. And then Maura and Emily can also tell you all about what it's been like to be a RAD fellow for the last year or so, and what led them to apply for this scheme. The floor is open for you to ask any questions, and you can submit them via the chat function on YouTube. So I'll now share my screen. So with the Race Against Dementia Fellowships, we hope to accelerate progress towards research breakthroughs. And we aim to provide outstanding early career researchers with very generous and flexible and long-term funding to allow them to develop their careers in dementia research. The scheme also comes with quite unique developmental opportunities, which you'll hear more about in the next hour or so. And RAD also want to facilitate UK and global collaborations for their fellows. So the maximum amount you can apply for is £500,000 for 5 years, and the deadline is the 5th of September. So what are we hoping to fund with the scheme? Our remit is quite broad and spans the whole biomedical spectrum of dementia research. So we hope that with your research, you're aiming to improve how dementia is diagnosed, how we can reduce the risk of dementia in the long term, and how we can find new innovative treatments for dementia. And when I say dementia, is any type of dementia, not just Alzheimer's disease. And obviously, we want to understand the mechanisms that improve our understanding of the disease, that then can lead to better diagnosis, risk reduction strategies and treatments. Our current fellows work on a variety of projects and topics. I would encourage you to go to the RAD website and to check out what each of them is doing at the moment. And you'll see that some of them are working on quite basic mechanisms, while others are looking more at the clinical end of the spectrum. So in terms of eligibility, clinical and biomedical researchers from across all disciplines can apply. There is a maximum of 3 years post-PhD research experience at the time of applying, which obviously can be adjusted for part-time working and career breaks. You don't have to have, if you're still carrying out your PhD, you don't have to complete your PhD by the time you're applying. You can complete it by the time we contract, which would be in February, March 2023. And we also ask that you have a UK research institution as host, as a base, and that's purely for administrative reasons, so we can contract with that organization. But RAD does encourage you to undertake your project in other labs collaboratively, either in the UK or internationally. So if you feel like you can carry out a project in more than one institution. So here's a timeline. The application process, the application deadline is on the 5th of September. After that, between September and November, Alzheimer's Research UK will seek external peer reviewers to comment on the application. We usually look for 3 to 5 experts internationally. Then throughout November and December, you'll be given a chance to respond to those reviewers. And all of that leads up to a final grant review board meeting in January, where we make recommendations for interviews. The interviews also happen in January, and the fellows that are recommended for funding are then approved by Alzheimer's Research UK and Race Against Dementia trustees in February. So finally, if you want to read a bit more about eligibility criteria and what we're looking for, you can check out our website. But if you have any questions that you don't want to post today, if you want to run any personal circumstances by us, please do email us at research@alzheimersresearchuk.org. And that's it from me. I will hand over to Bridget now, who could tell us a bit more about how this scheme came about and what RAD are looking for. Oh, you're on mute, Bridget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosa. As Rosa said, RAD is looking for outstanding early career researchers. And this came about because the chairman of our trustees, Sir Jackie Stewart, is a former racing driver. And he has had an outstanding career, first of all as an Olympic shot and then as a 3-time Formula One racing driver. He's very well known, perhaps not so well known to people of your age, but certainly to people of my age and my generation. And very sadly, his wife, Lady Stewart, was diagnosed with fronto-temporal dementia back in 2015. So Sir Jackie took her around the world to all the best scientists that he could find and said, please, can you cure her? Please, can you make sure that she doesn't have dementia anymore? And of course, inevitably, the scientists all said, well, we're very sorry, but there's nothing we can do. And Sir Jackie is not a man to whom one says no very often, certainly not twice. So he decided that the best way to go about this was to fund a charity that could support researchers, early career researchers. He's very much of the view that some of the older medics, if I can put it that way, have not done as much as they should have done for dementia research. And while cancer research has been incredibly successful over the last 40 years, very little has happened in the field of dementia research. So he's backing youth. He's backing people who've just done their PhDs and are about to, he hopes, make major breakthroughs in what's happening in the dementia research world. So we've backed these RAD fellows, as we call them, and we now have a team of 15 people, 11 fellows and 4 RAD associates who are working on various projects, but they're all dementia researchers and they're all, certainly by my standards, young people. And it's great. There's tremendous energy, which I hope you'll hear about from our 2 fellows who we have here today. We want to bring together collaboration. People can talk about their research, they can bounce ideas off each other, they can move things forward. So Jackie's vision is to accelerate the pace of research, to drive things forward, and to make sure that we do have some kind of prevention or cure in the very near future. I'm not going to say any more, but we're delighted that people are applying for RAD fellowships, and we want to make this a real team effort, and we want to find a cure for dementia. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. It's really inspirational what Sir Jackie Stewart has done, and really welcome funding for dementia research. So we'll move now to our Q&A session. We already have a question. What about public health research, like epidemiological studies? I think that's about remit. Yes, those would certainly be within our remit, and you would be welcome to submit an application with that in mind. If you want to run a summary by us, please do email us, and we're happy to review that ahead of you applying. So now over to Maura and Emily. I can start with a few questions. what were you doing before you became a RAD Fellow, and why did you opt for a RAD Fellowship to apply for one of these? Emily, would you like to go first?
Yeah, of course. So thank you for joining us today to hear more about the RAD Fellowship scheme. So my background, I did my undergraduate degree at the University of Leicester in medical genetics, and then I moved to Warwick and did a PhD in neuroscience. And the main focus of my PhD was understanding tau pathology and how it affects the function of neurons. And throughout my PhD, I started to develop my own ideas of how I could push those findings further and develop the research, and that led me to apply for fellowships. And in looking at what was available for people straight out of their PhD, the Race Against Dementia Fellowship stood out head and shoulders above the rest. And we'll hear more about this when we talk about the career and development opportunities. But certain things like a 5-year fellowship gives you an awful lot of freedom to develop a big project with big ideas. And one of the great things about Race Against Dementia is it pushes you to think big, to see how far you can develop, to go out and network with other scientists around the world so that you can get the best team together. And I think that's a really great focus, and giving you 5 years to do that gives you a lot more scope than a kind of standard 3-year fellowship. So that was one of the big driving forces towards this program.
And you, Maura?
Hi everyone, and thanks Emily to introduce some points that I wanted to touch as well. I have like a different background from Emily. I studied psychology for my bachelor, and then I did a master in cognitive neurosciences, and then I moved to Cambridge for my PhD in clinical neurosciences, so working with people with dementia. And I was focusing on imaging, neuroimaging, and different markers to look at the brain of living patients. And during my PhD, I wanted to focus on one aspect, and in particular inflammation in frontotemporal dementia, and like in embracing a multidisciplinary approach, like involving immunologists, blood markers expert, imaging, and also different institutions, not just Cambridge. And when I was finishing my PhD, I was waiting for my viva, the call open for Race Against Dementia. And I remember that in comparison to other calls that were open back then, definitely the 5 years were like the very attractive aspect of this fellowship, because they can really give you like the stability of making major difference and the focus on your research, rather than after 2 years thinking again about like your salary, your funding. And in comparison to other fellowship available for early career researchers, they also provide funding for consumables. So you are not just covered in terms of salary, but also for your own idea. So if you have a supportive supervisor, you can go there and express your idea. I want to try this for the next 5 years, and they provide you funding to do that. And another aspect that it was very appealing in comparison to other fellowships out there is that they were very supportive for spending time in other institutions. So as part of your budget, you could calculate some cost to spend 6 months, 1 year, I think up to 2 years somewhere else. So for example, I'm based in Cambridge, but I will be spending a few months in San Francisco at UCSF and in Munich during my fellowship. So I think it's amazing because it's pushing you to think about big ideas, but also in a collaborative way.
Yes, and you were both quite early career researchers. Well, you still are, but you were coming out of your PhDs. So I guess putting together an application was a new thing for you. So were there any particularly challenging bits about putting an application together?
Yeah, definitely. Maybe I can start with this. Definitely something very challenging that I think someone mentioned in the webinar that I attended, this kind of webinar that I attended before applying. It was the budgeting part of the fellowship, because you can have this amazing idea, but from the idea to application, of course, you have to think and plan how you want to spend money in the next 5 years. And I think at least as a PhD student, I didn't realize how many steps you have to consider and go through to calculate, to make a reasonable budget. You have to consider like labs, like who provides the tracers for PET, for example, or clinics, and go through the finance office. So like, yeah, that was, I think, the most tricky part, and something that I can suggest to start really in advance, like having the idea, but like really thinking what you need to make that happen.
I think one of the really great things to add on the back of Maura's point there, though, is that you have to create a budget when you apply for your project. But one of the great things about Race Against Dementia is that it's not 100% fixed. So if you get 2 or 3 years in and you find an amazing collaboration in the US and that wasn't in your project, they'll support you to move your funding around so that you can go out, because what they want is for you to work with the best people. And it might be that you don't have that idea when you put your application in, but it develops over time. And I think that's a fantastic thing about the scheme. In terms of the most challenging part of the application, I think, as you say, none of us really had much experience in grant writing because we're very early in our career. And what you don't realize, you sit down and writing the case for support, the research project is often very easy because you've got all the ideas when you decide to apply for a fellowship. But you don't realize how many other things go into the thing. So you've got your budget, but you've also got all the summaries, the ethics, the data protection plan, all these other things. And some of those are really important. For example, your lay summary, your ability to communicate what you want to do to the public, and particularly to the RAD trustees, is really, really important. And my advice would be, don't leave that stuff to the last minute, because that stuff's really important as well. And also, I think on the AAR UK website, there's a wonderful guide of how to write a lay summary, which I remember using when I did my application. So it's worth going and checking that out because it's got some really good advice on it.
And you both mentioned the international collaborations or secondments that you're planning. Can I ask you a bit more about that? Did you plan those in advance, and or are things coming up as you complete your project that you think you might take advantage of?
So from my point of view, I decided to stay at Warwick. So my PhD was here and I've stayed in the same lab. So it was really important for me to generate a collaboration internationally so that I could go and learn some new skills, because that's a big part of a fellowship. And if you're staying in the same lab, it's a good way to show that you branch out with what you're doing. And so that I'm going to go and spend some time at the University of Gothenburg in a biomarker lab, which is fantastic. But Maura and I are both in the first 6 months of the fellowship, so we haven't had a lot of time yet to develop ideas outside of the proposal, but I'm sure over the course we'll find other places to go as the research progresses.
Yeah, also when I applied, I was already in touch with, for example, my collaborators from Munich, and they were super supportive. So they were part of the letters of support, like to spend a few months there, because they do slightly different things that we do in Cambridge. So I can learn things and then come back to Cambridge and apply similar things here. But for example, for the San Francisco one, it was open, like it was not certain. So like if you have a collaborator that you'd like to spend time with during your fellowship, and because you think that they have a particular technique that you want to learn, or even just to like go there and learn, like see a different environment. Because for example, Emily and I are staying in the same university where we spend our PhD. So I think it's very important also see other perspectives to like learn how to do better research. I think like it is what Emily mentioned of the flexibility of the budget, like consider also the budget in the course. I think that helps in case a new collaboration comes up. And for example, the San Francisco one now is possible because I was considering, but was not certain. So I put that in the application, then I finalized during my fellowship.
Yeah, we have a question about that now, actually. Do you need to already have the connections with international secondment groups, or can you put these as potential collaborators and include them in the proposal? And we've seen by your answers that actually it can be both. You can pre-plan it if you already have an idea of what's going to happen, but we're really happy to be flexible with the budget and with your plans changing as the fellowship goes on. Would you say that's yeah. Right, Maura, for you?
Yeah, definitely is not a requirement having a letter of support. Of course, if you already have connection and they are already happy to host you, even better, because you can show in their application that you have official support from them, but it's not necessary. So like just keep in mind that you can calculate in the budget, like I would like to have 6 months out there somewhere I consider this for these reasons, but of course there is not a contract, and I think like you can have both, definitely.
And going back to the application process, after your applications were reviewed, you went through an interview step, which is quite an important step. How did you prepare for the interview panel?
I think the thing to remember is that prior to going to an interview, your proposal will have been sent out to review. So you touched on this, Rosa. You'll have got all of the comments back, and you'll have sent a rebuttal. So obviously the main thing is to make sure you know your project inside out, and to make sure you can speak to any concerns or queries that have been brought up by the reviewers, because they're the things that are likely to be picked up. But also remember that you've passed kind of the scientific review part by that point. And from my point of view, I think a fellowship interview is much more about you. So you've got to show them why they should invest in you. Why is this project going to make you a leader in the field? You've got to inspire confidence that they should hire you as a new RAD fellow. And also the panel's quite mixed. So you've got basic scientists, you've got clinicians. Bridget sat on the panel. So you've got quite a wide range of people that you're talking to. And so it's much more of a whole approach rather than specific details of the science, I found.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think like is more pitching your idea in a bigger scheme of like, it's not just your project and like what you are doing year 1, year 2, but like what is the impact of your project in a like a bigger scheme. And something that it was very helpful for me to like prepare my interview was trying to organize some mock interviews with colleagues, especially from different career stages and backgrounds. So like people that were super helpful and super kind and available. They were reading maybe the summary or the entire application, and then we met, and like even if we were friends or colleagues, they were very tough and asking questions, and think that was extremely helpful, because like you just go there with that nervosism that you otherwise have during the interview, and you just practice to answer questions.
Yeah, mock interviews can sometimes be tougher than the real thing.
Yeah.
But I would echo what you said. By the time a fellow goes to interview, means the project scored really well in external peer review and at the grant review board. So it's really just about seeing whether the fellow has command of the project and can think about the bigger picture and answer some questions.
Could I just ask Maura and Emily, having had the training from the Radfellows leadership program, do you think you would have done better or worse in your interviews? And how's that helped you?
Shall I go? Yeah, I think definitely for the presentation, because the interview for our cohort, we needed to give a 5 minutes presentation, and then it was half an hour of questions. So for the presentation, of course, now that we have this training about pitching your idea, I think like I would go back and use some of those new skills that we learn with the fellowship training, because like you learn, like maybe we'll speak more about that later, but like with this training, for example, we have various trainings that we are attending at the moment for public speech, for pitching your idea, for like leadership training in general. And I think we are really learning how to present ourselves, and not just our project, as Emily mentioned, for example, is like the entire package, and pitching on the entire package, why we are the best, why we are in the best places, why we are doing the best thing for this goal. So yeah, Bridget, to answer your question, I think probably I would have quite good ideas now to put back in my interview.
Yeah, I mean, I'd add to that, definitely the pitching skills are very important. We've also had something called Kingstree Training. So Kingstree are a group based in London. And they give us, they work with lots and lots of big companies and people in high profile positions. And they teach presentation training in a conversational style. And so I know that we've all become much more confident in talking to people about our research and about the charity. Even in the short 6 months that we've been part of this scheme, people are much more confident in doing that now. So it's definitely been beneficial.
Yeah, these are great opportunities that are quite unique to this fellowship. So apart from presentation skills and communication skills, what other development or career progression opportunities or even mentoring opportunities have been provided by RAD so far, and how have they benefited you?
So I think there are a lot of things that we can mention. I will start maybe with a couple, and then Emily, maybe you can cover the others. But just to start with, I think something that is unique of this fellowship is the fact that we are trained to reach our best performance, and not just academically, but for example, we have one-to-one meetings with coaches from HINSA, which is a program that tries to improve our mental health and performance, making us reflecting on our routines in terms of sleep, in terms of diet, in terms of exercise, in terms of being motivated and find your purpose. And I think that is quite unique. I mean, I have never heard any other fellowship giving these opportunities. And also in terms of mentors, because we have this fantastic interface with Formula One, we have also mentors from industry and not just academia that are involved or were involved with Formula One or are part of other type of industries. And I think that is quite unique, because sometimes we are used to just being academics and just see how it works in academia, and why having this fresh view from someone else that worked in other fields is so important for us, and really change, for my experience, for example, change the mindset to accelerate, to also deal with issues or problems or confrontations. I think is fantastic having this opportunity and these different interfaces.
I think those are some of the really great things. I mean, I just wanted to highlight, so last week or the week before, maybe we had our first RAD summer school. So all 12 of the fellows, 12 or 13 of the fellows now, came over. So globally, we've got fellows in the US, in Australia. Everyone came together for the first time to share their research, but also with a focus on learning how we can learn lessons from Formula One. So Jackie brought in ex-engineers from Formula One. We had Jonathan Neal, who's Maura's mentor, coming to talk to us and just give us advice from this outside perspective on how we can learn from what they do as teams, because they're exceptional team workers, people in Formula One. And just the level of speed and innovation is remarkable. And how can we learn those lessons and apply them in our labs to make our research better? And we had a fantastic day on the Thursday of this summer school where we brought all of our supervisors, our academic supervisors, and our mentors together so that we could sit down and work out how we can channel all of this information into accelerating our research. And it's things like that that you just don't get outside of a fellowship like this. And then these opportunities are fantastic, and I would encourage everyone. Encourage everyone to apply if you're thinking about it.
Yeah, and to add on this, I think one other difference because of this summer school, because we are meeting every 2 months, even if we are spread around the world, we meet on Zoom to catch up and to speak about progresses or problems also. I think in comparison to other fellowship, we are creating a community. So Race Against Dementia and Alzheimer Research UK, I think, really care of creating a community of their fellows rather than working individually. So also potential new collaboration between us. So yeah, it's very, very unique.
Yeah, it's really great peer support because you're all more or less at the same stages on your career. So it's really great to have that support from your colleagues. What advice would you have for applicants who are just unsure? They're just finishing their PhDs. They're not sure they're ready for a full 5-year fellowship. What would you tell them?
Sorry, I was waiting to see if you were. So I think the thing about a 5-year fellowship is that you've got to think of a project that's big enough to span 5 years. And that doesn't mean that you need to have planned every experiment that you're going to do and what week you're going to do it on. But you need to think of kind of big enough set of aims to span 5 years. And find your collaborators and people like your supervisors will be good people to help you think who you could be collaborating with. And also when you've been to conferences and met people and talked to people within the field, Think about people who've been doing similar things to you, or techniques that you found exciting when you've been at conferences, and think, oh, well, could I use that to grow my research? But I think the advice here the one piece of advice would be that you've got to think big, you've got to be brave and bold and think how you can push your research to be kind of really outstanding, because you want to develop yourself to be a leader in the field. And that's what Race Against Dementia are looking for. The other thing is that as early career researchers, we tend to kind of shy away from trying to sell ourselves, because you're just straight out of a PhD and you don't have a lot of confidence. But a fellowship application is kind of your time to shine. So you need to sell yourself, sell your research, and just take a punt, because the payback from a fellowship like this is fantastic. So yeah, put your ideas down, apply, and see how you get on.
Yeah, I completely agree. And also, if you are not sure about your idea because of this, maybe a bit of a lack of self-confidence, because, you know, like when we were finishing a PhD, like, I mean, it's also a tough period immediately after, like trying to find your space in academia, trying to like make your name out there. I think like just talk to people, like if you want to spend 5 years in a place, in a specific university, you should speak with people there and trying to understand if you can have a supportive network, if your future supervisor can walk through all your ideas together and like try to help you also to understand if it makes sense or not. You know, like I think like having the supportive network around is very important. And like before the application, I think is the right moment to speak with people and the colleagues, and also double check their reality, like your ideas, if like they make sense, if for 5 years. But yeah, be brave, like that is the opportunity. Like there are no other fellowship that allow you to do that. So
there are a few questions that I think are more for me. So the rules state that applicants to the RAD fellowship will not be eligible to apply for any other Alzheimer's Research UK fellowship schemes in this period. Does that mean I cannot apply for both with the hope that I would get one if I don't get the other? That's true. So you can only apply for one of them. We have two schemes open concurrently, and I would encourage you, if you are within 3 years of your PhD, to apply for the RAD fellowship, and if not, to apply for the Alzheimer's Research UK fellowship, because that one doesn't have any time limit. But we won't be able to accept two applications that are exactly the same for the charity to review. There's also a question, can I apply if I'm based in the US? The host institution will need to be based in the UK. So you're welcome to, like our fellows have talked about, work across different universities throughout the 5 years. But contractually, we need well, administratively, we need to contract with a UK host organization, who will then set up subcontracts with other organizations internationally if need be. So yeah, and then also I work in technology and AI. Would my research be eligible for this program? Certainly, that field of research is really exciting at the moment. All we ask is that the goal of your project is to enhance our understanding of dementia, mechanisms that lead to dementia, or improve diagnostics or detection or diagnosis of the diseases, risk reduction, and new treatments. But any discipline, really, anyone working in any discipline is welcome to apply. One more question. Brilliant talk, thank you. Please, can I ask, how do RAD and AR UK define outstanding, particularly for those straight out of a PhD? So maybe that's one for me and Bridget. From my perspective, we have on our website an early career researcher framework where we outline the skills and experience that we expect from applicants at different stages of their careers. So I would encourage you to have a look at that and see specifically the things that you can highlight in your CV or your application that you have achieved or that you plan to develop during your fellowship. And they're not just things like publications or collaborations that you form, but also other things like your communication skills, the networks that you've been able to establish through your work, your growing profile in your area of research, and yeah, public engagement, for example. So yeah, have a look at the ECR career framework, which will give you some inspiration and some hints of the types of things that we're looking for, and we ask our reviewers to look for when they review applications. Bridget, what does outstanding mean to RAD?
Well, of course, it means that there's good science and that the project is a viable one and a sensible one, but it also means somebody who's got tremendous drive and energy and really wants to succeed. So we are looking for people who want to make a difference in life and in particular in dementia research, so that they can really push things forward and accelerate the outcome.
Thank you. Well, is there a last piece of advice that Bridget, Maura, or Emily would like to give to any prospective applicants before we wrap up? Bridget, would you like to go?
Well, my advice is please have a go, because one never knows the outcome. And I hope that we will be able to expand the RAD fellowship scheme and promote many more young early career researchers so that we can push things forward. We need applicants. So let's see lots of CVs, lots of applications, please.
Maura?
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, just try, because I think like this is a unique opportunity. And, you know, like if you don't apply, you never know if you are the right candidate. So yeah, just try. And also it is like, of course, like there it is competitive, but you never know. You can be the right person, the right place, in the right time. And if it is not the case, it is a good exercise to learn how to apply for grants. So yeah, just give a try, definitely.
And Emily?
I mean, I'd agree. It's the same sentiment. I mean, we've been fellows for 6 months out of the 5 years, so we've got a long way to go yet. But the scale of what we've learned already from the development program is incredible. And just take the opportunity and apply. I think the question about what do you define as outstanding, I think people are put off from applying straight out of their PhD due to a lack of confidence. But it's outstanding for your career stage. So you don't have to have already had lots of other grants to apply for your own fellowship because you're just out of your PhD. So it's, yeah, don't be put off for going for something straight away. Just have a go, and hopefully you'll be coming to join us in our Race Against Dementia team.
Great advice. Thank you all for coming. I think those are all the questions we have for now. But if anyone watching these has any other questions that they'd like us to address, or if they need any help with the application process, please do email us at research@alzheimersresearchuk.org, and we will be in touch with you soon. And just as a reminder, the deadline has been extended to the 5th of September, so you still have a little bit of time to submit your applications. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to the panel for your help this afternoon, and thank you to Adam Smith and Dementia Researcher for hosting us today. Bye everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.